the class.
Right.
Probably.
Just let me know if you're able to see my screen, please. Can you see my screen? No? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. And let's move start. So I've been wondering if there's a Google Meet plugin that allows you to figure out if you're still online as you're doing a presentation or something. I've been messing around. I just feel it feels a bit awkward trying to ask people if they can hear you or something midway through an interaction. They should be. Let me see. Google Meet. Probably maybe not. Anyway, can always try something else. All right, great. So before we start, I just thought I would start with a few announcements. Marking has not yet been done. We are busy with IDE. So the students that are pursuing programs offered in the department using the IDE mode of instruction, so distance education mode of instruction, exams next month, this month actually, beginning on the 17th. So we've been busy with that. I've not marked that. Usually marking is done by tutors, but there's no tutor for this course. So not sure when the marking is going to be done, but as always, communication will be sent through once that is done. And then the other thing is, it appears when they choose the slot that I'd suggested is not really going to work out for me, at least for now. So I will reach out to the two class reps to try and find out if my mornings are not really that bad, right? My mornings are not really that bad. So it's either we can schedule an early morning class on Tuesday or early morning class on Friday. That would be nice. So I'll speak to the class reps to find out. I have a sneaking suspicion people are available early in the morning on Friday or early in the morning on Tuesday or something. But I'll reach out to the class reps and then you can let me know which slot is going to be convenient. Great. Okay, so we continue, unless if there are any questions with regards to what we covered the last time we met. So we go to a stage where we're discussing, we started our discussion of characteristics associated with peripherals, right? So we go to a stage where we're looking at data rates essentially, and we made mention of the fact that typically in computing, data rates are measured using a metric called throughput. And in our case, or at least in computing, it's always, throughput is always relative to, it always involves two measurables, so that would be the data relative to a predefined unit time. And usually the time is measured in seconds, so it would be bytes per second or something, megabytes per second, right? Right. It turns out that it's a very important metric because it gets to determine exactly how much of something you can transmit in a given period of time, right? When you're working on a computer and you are, let's say, using a keyboard, and it's a word example, but you connect your external drive to your computer system. One of the things you want to do is to ensure that the data being transmitted from your external hard drive to the computer system is done as quickly as possible at a very fast rate. So obviously the rate at which or how long it's going to take is relative to the throughput associated with that particular device. All right, I don't know if there are any questions. If there are no questions, then we will continue our discussion. So it turns out that it's measurable. We're obsessing a lot about. You know, the upper part of our formula, throughput, is equal to the measurable over time, right? It turns out that the quantity that we're interested in measuring insofar as throughput is concerned, throughputs associated with data rates linked to peripherals is typically measured in a certain unit, right? And by convention, the data or the quantity is normally represented in bytes. Right? It turns out, though, that fundamentally, remember we keep mentioning the fact that computers will typically store data and instructions as ones and zeros, right? Bits. In fact, they're not literal ones and zeros, but they're nothing more than electric signals, right? So a one could signal the fact that it's a one could signal the result that could signal the fact that electricity is flowing, right? A zero could signal the fact that there's no electricity flowing through some circuitry or something. But collectively, 8 of such bits will make up a byte, right? And because the quantity, the size of the measurable that you're interested in is contextual, there are instances where what you're measuring is relatively large in size. For instance, if I was to do a DF on my computer, what you will notice is that I do a DF on my computer and I say I want to measure this in bytes. What you will notice is that, where am I now? I'm lost in the source. What you will notice is, what I'm looking for is, okay, the root, SDA2. So if I go and check SDA2 here, you notice that looking at this value when measured in bytes makes little sense, right? I mean, maybe it would make sense, but it's not a user-friendly way of representing a large figure, right? So if I say, oh, I have a hard disk that has, I have a hard disk and it has used, what is this figure? Used space on my hard disk is 448,481,708 bytes. Doesn't make sense, right? What makes sense, at least for most people, it makes sense to me anyway. What makes sense to most people is telling them to say, oh, my used space is 428 gigabytes, right? Which is what we're saying. We're saying the representation of these figures is contextual. And it's not just hard disk space, it's memory, for instance. It makes sense if I tell you to say my computer has, we'll just take it, it's 11 GB of RAM. This makes more sense. Observe, if I tell you to say, oh, my computer has, maybe megabytes, I guess. My computer has 11,790 megabytes of RAM. It'll be a bit confusing, right? Whereas still, if I tell you to say, oh, my computer has, what is this? 12,073,320 bytes of RAM. That would be, people will look at you strange, but I would at least anyway. Right, so you understand, it's contextual, which is why we need to scale them to a unit that is easy to understand, which is how we've ended up with this slide here with this conversion. So it turns out that data is stored in ones and zeros on a computer. 8 bits represent a byte. 1,024 bytes will represent 1 kilobyte, K, right? 1,024 kilobytes will represent 1 megabyte. 1,024 megabytes will represent 1 gigabyte. 1,024 gigabytes will represent 1 terabyte. Now it goes on and on. There's petabytes, zettabytes. Storage is increasing at a really fast rate these days, right? Sorry, somebody wants to come in. The people that never want to listen, right? So sad. So sad that it's almost more than 6 months now, almost a year, and you can't follow simple instructions. But anyway, that's fine. Which is on. Is this making sense? You will notice there's a pattern here. The units are in increasing order here. The next unit is a multiple of 10,024. Right, so for us to get a kilobyte out of a byte, we need to multiply, we need to divide the byte by 1,024. For us to get the subsequent unit, we need to divide it by another 1,024. For us to derive a megabyte from a byte, we need to divide it by 1024 squared, right? Because we are jumping one unit here. Is this making sense? Which is why, observe, which is why if we come to my hard disk, right? My hard disk has this size here. Just look at this partition here, dev SDA2, right? I hope there's Adventist in here. If I do that, what we're saying is that the capacity total is that. If you look at this used, just call this T to make it a lot easier. Total used remaining. You notice Lighton needs to clean up here and back up some garbage, right? He has 6 GB left, which is why 99% of his storage is used up, right? There's 1% remaining. But what we're saying is, for us to get the equivalent megabyte, we just need to do our conversion. We know that 1 GB, it's direct proportion from primary school here. 1 GB is equal to 1024 megabytes. So for us to get the equivalent megabyte of the used space here, 428, all we have to do is we say, I guess 428 GB, we don't know, right? So we are multiplying this by 1024. So we see that this value here is going to be the equivalent of, actually, I don't know why I'm using a calculator when we can use LibreOffice Calc, I guess. I hope is this making sense? Like,
yes, sir.
help you, yeah, used space, right? And this used space. So we're saying that currently his used space is that, right, in GB. For us to get megabytes, all we have to do is, because it's a multiples of 1024, for us to get megabytes, all we have to do is multiply this by 1024. For us to get kilobytes, all we have to do is multiply this by 1024. For us to get bytes, all we have to do is multiply this value by 1024. Which is why if I'm to check this value here, when I run df in a non-human readable format, what you'll notice is I have this value here. This, hope it's exactly the same, or at least mostly somewhat similar anyway. Difference is not that. I wonder why there's a difference. Something a bit weird here. There's a slight difference. I don't know where the difference is coming from, but you get the point, right? Minute difference. Is this making sense? Yes, it's there's something I haven't done, right? Is this in bytes or kilobytes? I wonder. Oh, so you notice that when I run df, it's represented in kilobytes. So this value here is in kilobytes. It's supposed to be mapped onto this value here, which is almost exactly the same, somewhat the same. The difference is minute here. There is a difference, but it's not that much. Is this making sense? So it's just multiples essentially, right? You're getting multiples of values. If you're going the other way around, you start dividing values, right? All right, and the list goes on and on here. You can look up the data units. I'm sure there are useful sites you can find online, like if we say computer. I don't know if this is a weird way of, there we go. I hope it's a long list, just to look at what we have. There we go, kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte, petabyte, exabyte, zettabyte, yottabyte. And all of these are just using multiples of 1024 here, if you notice here. Yeah. 1024, 1024, 1024, 24, 1024. All right, so the question then is, what if we are faced with, yeah, anyway, so we say the data transmission rates, on the other hand, so this is how the units are represented on a computer, but the data transmission rates, on the other hand, they use a different sort of they use different units, right? So typically when you see a value that is represented by lowercase k and the lowercase b here, you're looking at megabits, right? The data is being represented in bits rather than bytes. So we want to be very careful about that, right? And the conversion from kilobits to megabits is somewhat different. Instead of 1024, you're looking at 1,000. I don't know if this is making sense here. On your mobile, on the value that you typically have on, let's say your phone, for instance, I do believe that's represented in I could be wrong here, but those are megabits, not megabytes. Right? So the transmission rates that you see on your phone, when you connect your phone to your mobile service provider's network to access the internet, those values are represented in bits, right? So bits per second. All right, so if you find yourself doing calculations that involve bits and bytes, then obviously you need to be aware of the fact that you need to harmonize them or to normalize them in a way. So if whatever it is you're calculating has a combination of bytes and bits, all you have to do is make sure that you reconcile them. Either you dumb down the bytes to bits, or you convert the bits to bytes. And the conversion is simple. Remember, we are so pretty easy here to do. Is this making sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Kind
So,
of.
yeah, what do you mean kind of? What part of what we're doing is not making sense? I want to make sure this makes sense so that you make an informed decision when you're buying data, or when mom and dad ask you the rates. My phone says it's 38.
I think I'm a bit behind on bits, conversion of bits and the like. So maybe you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the conversion of bits when you are calculating maybe a throughput.
Yeah.
Conversion of bits you are given in bits. Now you need to convert them into MBs or GBs. Like that.
Okay, we have an example, a traditional example we're going to use here. So maybe this will make sense. Can I ask that you hold on to your question, and then we'll ask you, Master Tembo, if you still have questions after we go through this Zambia example, very trivial example. Is that fine?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. The throughput, by the way, the 5.27 megabits per second was actually measured last year. I'm not sure if the data rates for Zambia when we are on the 5th floor of the School of Education building, if they're still the same, or if Zambia has upgraded, right? They're always making changes. If you notice, if you've been paying particular attention to what's been happening on the mobile service provider scene, you'll realize that the data rates have been steadily increasing, right? With these rumors of 5G coming onto the scene, bigger and better things are coming our way. But here's a hypothetical example. We're saying Zamtel's download speed, right? Notice it's download, right? Not upload speed, because your mobile service provider will typically have different rates for the upload speed. If you can see my screen here, this 21 is the download speed, it's gone down. This 36 is the upload speed. So what we're saying here is that the download speed for Zamtel is 5.27 megabits per second. The question then is how long how long is it going to take us if we have a device that that is working at this theoretical throughput? How long would it take us approximately to download a 10 megabyte PDF file? Let's say this was like some one of the slides that we've done, right? This is the point. Now you notice here that we have two of the ingredients associated with our formula for computing the throughput. We're saying the throughput is equal to the measurable over the time, right? It's direct proportion now. So for you to measure the time, you just play around with the formula. Is that not so? If you have the throughput and you have the measurable, then you can compute the time. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for the time, right? So we're just going to walk through this together, and you'll notice that the thing that I would like for us to pay particular attention to here is how we're going to play around with the units, because we need to harmonize these units. Megabits per second, megabytes, right? So we need to harmonize this. Either we change this so that this throughput is represented in bytes, not bits, or we change this measurable to bits. Now the choice is yours, depends on how you went about, I guess, learning arithmetic in grade 1. Some people would prefer to convert this, right? Some people this, but let's see what Lighton did here. So first starting point here, we're saying our throughput, formula for throughput is equal to the measurable, in this case the size, over the time, right? For us to get the time, we just swap around the formula, right?
So you are tripping.
Cross multiplication here, we're saying time is equal to
Sir, we can't get you.
So I can get you.
Class rep should contact him. He's zoned out.
Sir, hello.
Hopefully it won't happen like last time if he's coming.
Nanga, what happened last time?
You tell me you forgot the new people. I'll speak when it's such recording right now.
Don't be scared, just say.
And risk it.
By the way,
the head. Hell no.
by the way, you cross rep, so you're contacting him. Do you write an email or you have to call him?
It's an email, Munduanga.
Contact him. Tell him you're out of it.
hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
At what point could you not hear me? Was I breaking or something?
Just when
Yes.
you want
As soon
to.
as you put, you are converting the
The formula.
Okay, great. I will share my screen. Sorry about that. I'm wondering if maybe we should just revert back to offline screencasts. But anyway, that's besides the point. So this is the example is pretty trivial here, right? And by the way, this example can be applied to different scenarios. Like for instance, if you're looking at trying to determine exactly how long it's going to take for you to move an ISO image, like a large file from your computer to your USB thumb drive, for instance, you do the same thing. It's the same formula, right? If you know the throughput of your thumb drive, which is almost always the case, they'll tell you the throughput, then you can calculate how long it's going to take. If you have an old thumb drive and details of the throughput have been erased or something because of wear and tear, what you can do is you can create a theoretical throughput by taking into account the size of what you're moving and how long it would take you to move that thing, right? But in this example, we are interested in computing the time. right? So we are saying we're going through the process of, because we're interested in converting the time, we just rearrange our formula so that the dependent variable is going to be the time, right? We're just cross multiplying here. The measurable is the file we want to download. It's 10 megabytes in size. Yeah. We are told that the speed, the download speed for Zamtel is 5.27 megabits per second. Now, what I was trying to get at is that it would be folly for us to just say we're going to divide 10 by 5.27 and just say, oh, our 10 megabytes and 5.27. We say our time is going to be 10 divided by 5.27, and we say the file is going to take 1.89 seconds to download. Not quite. Why? Because these units are not the same. So we need to harmonize these two units. Right? So the way that I recommend, if you're doing this for the first time, and if you've forgotten your arithmetic from primary school, the way I recommend that you do this piecewise. If you're trying to absorb, playing around with examples, do them step by step. So the first step is you want to make sure that this value is normalized to its base unit, right? The base unit for this 10 megabyte is a byte. So we need to get the equivalent in bytes of 10 megabytes, right? So we know that all we have to do is just multiply it by 1024 to the power 2. Why? Because we are moving from megabyte to kilobyte to byte, right? Once we scale the byte, then we can do the conversion from byte to bits. Is this making sense? So the measurable now becomes this value, right? I've just left it the way it is here, but of course, as you're doing this, you can change the figures if you want to. But remember that we're saying, oh my goodness, somebody wants to come in. No, they're gone. Remember that we're saying 1 byte is equal to 8 bits. So 1 bit then is going to be equal to 1/8 of a byte, right? And we want this because if you're following through, what I'm doing here is, because I've realized that this value here is represented in megabits per second, what I've decided to do is to convert this into bits so that I'm working with the same units here. I could just as well have decided to convert the throughput from bits per second to bytes per second. What I found is that if you do it the other way around, if you try and convert this to bytes, it takes slightly, I guess maybe I'm wrong, but it can be a bit confusing anyway, but which is on. Great, so we're saying 1 bit is equal to 1/8 of the byte, right? So we're going to use this proportion here to convert these bytes to bits. Essentially, it's just multiplying by 1/8. So what we're saying then is that the value we are working with, and I think I've done something a bit unorthodox here. I don't know if people have noticed what I'm doing here. I'm actually doing it the other way around, where I'm converting the megabits per second to bytes per second, right? 1 bit is equal to 1/8 of a byte. So then this value here, 5.27 is the equivalent of 5.27 megabits per second is the same as 5.27 times, is it 1 million bytes per second? Is this making sense? Observe.
Yes.
Observe this here. The unit we have is in this value here. We want to dumb it down to bits per second. How do we dumb it down to bits per second? Just scale it by multiplying it by 1 million, by multiplying it by 1000 to the power 2, essentially. In case people are not following through, we have 5.27 megabits per second. We want to convert these to bits per second. Yes, right? What we know is that 1,000 1 megabit is equal to 1,000 bits, 1,000 kilobits, right? One kilobit is going to be equal to 1,000 bits, right? So for us to get to megabits to bits, we need to multiply it by 1 million, 1,000 to the power 2. Which is why if we multiply this by 1,000, by 1 million rather, we get this value here, which is 5.2 million essentially, right? 5.2 million here. So we've scaled this value, we've normalized it to its base unit, right? But for us to convert this to bytes per second, because these are in bits, for us to convert them to bytes, we just multiply it by 1/8, which is why we end up with this throughput. So the throughput, this is the equivalent of this in bytes per second. Is this making sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
So another way of looking at this is if you want to convert this to bits per second, this is what you would have here. So you notice that in the slides, we have the throughput represented in bytes per second and bits per second. Okay, so seeing as we have the value now, what we're saying is that the measurable is in bytes, right? This is the value. The throughput has been represented in bytes as well, which is that. Then all we have to do now is just plug in the values, because these bytes, the bytes will just cancel each other out and then we remain with the seconds. So we divide the measurable by this value here. Is this making sense? And in fact, if you think about it, I think if you're on Zamtel and you try to download a file that's 10 megabytes in size, what you realize is that it makes sense that the value, the amount of time is going to take for you is this 15 seconds rather than what we had before, where we said we're just going to divide the 10 by 7.25 and just say it takes one second, essentially, or 2 seconds, which is virtually impossible, right? I don't think we have a mobile service provider that is able to operate at this speed here. Does this make sense? Yeah.
Oh, yes, it does. Sir,
Yes,
I have
sir.
a question there.
Yes.
So when answering, is it okay to maybe just write a statement to outline to the instructor what you're trying to do as you're answering if you do not write the formula? For example, if the question says that it takes, calculate the latency or the time it will take to download that same, the 10 MB file, when the throughput is 5.27 megabits per second, meaning in 1 second, I'm going to download 5.2 megabits. So if I just write a statement that I will convert the 10 MB to the bits, and then I find how many 5.27 megabits are present in the converted 10 MB to the bits, then that will give me the same time. Right in the statement as I'm answering, is it okay, or should I always include the formula?
Well, I mean, it depends, right? So, like if it's in the exam, normally the examination instructions will specify to say, show, I guess it's show your working or something, show your calculations, because it turns out that sometimes there are marks allocated to showing your calculation, right? And it's for your own good, actually. There are usually cases where you know what you're doing, but maybe somewhere during the computation, you end up with the wrong answer. So if you show what you were doing, you get some marks for showing that you understand what you're doing. The marks are normally broken down to include like formulas that you're using. So you want to make sure irrespective of what method you're using, you just want to make sure that you explicitly state how exactly you arrived at the answer. Instead of just saying the answer time is equal to 15.92 seconds, right? What if you were cheating or something? And these days, especially with, this is going to be more strict. These days, there are online calculators, right? Online calculator. I don't know, bits, download speed. The online calculators, so we know, right? We know that some of you characters will just come here, right? And just say file size, it's there, right? You know this. You come here, you find this weird looking calculator, right? You're even happy, you say it's 10, and then on speed, we include our speed. You see this, megabits, we include our 2.47 or something. This is a nice way of checking what we... You see this 15 seconds? The same one we got, yeah? So this is the thing here. Showing, in fact, it's going to be strict. We're going to be more strict using this so-called e-learning. Why? Because we know that you guys probably have access to these things. And you just come here, there's a question, you just come here and plug in the numbers. We want you to understand how this works, right? It's important. It's not just important for these throughput speeds we're talking about, it's also important for you trying to figure out to say, if I have, I guess if I have ISO, I wish I could find the file that's too large. If I had videos, I guess, it's good enough. If I have this large file here, right? If I have one of these large files here, let's say I wanted to copy this file to, I'm pressed with time and I want to copy it to my USB drive or something, or maybe I want to copy it to a different location on my computer. If I know how quickly I can transmit this file, then I'll get to decide whether I should do it right now. If I'm in a hurry, for instance, I want to go out and I want to move this file and I want to shut down my computer or something. I'll be able to make an informed decision if I understand the mechanics of how these things work, right? But of course, granted, this is going to be it's going to be much faster because I can just dump it to my hard disk. This is a bad example, you know, but I guess you get the point, right? So always show your working. This is very important. If we were to ask you a question, say how long would it take Lighton to transfer, or what is the throughput? If it takes 1.9 GB of a file, of an MP4 file, if it takes, let's wait for it. If it takes that file, goodness, where is the time? There's no time here. But if there was a time, if we give you the time, are you able to calculate the throughput, right? Are you able to come up with this answer here? Yeah. I hope I've answered your question. That was...
Yes, sir.
We are unable to hear you, sir.
Sir,
You're breaking up again.
Breaking up again, sir.
All right, great, good stuff.
I guess cheating is out of the question now. He knows.
Was it an option?
You can
You can't cheat.
Smart.
Like I said,
Apa?
the right informant.
I think he always had an idea that you can actually cheat. I mean, it's like he obviously has an idea.
That's why we talked about an open book exam.
But in this case, show your working, my friend. So,
Remember?
like I said, cheating is out of the question.
Jumula,
You can ICT by simple math.
Yoluwana.
Yes. Yeah, pera
Zalula
math
quiz.
yake tu.
Bla naangalia kumaya dimga izai.
Hello, contact the man. Eh?
Pena za ICT.
Guys, since the sir is not yet in, so are we going to go through the same things when we meet in the evening, or you have understood what that on a set together with the PDF
Yes,
I
for
sent?
clarification, because
Because I asked that I posted
thing.
I posted to confirm if you understood. Like but only Anita replied. So today I'm assuming that we proceed with the IO subsystem.
Nope. We haven't understood. So just better discuss what we're discussing right now.
Siringana zabwelela eka.
Now you are in. Yando.
All right. So sorry about that. Was a bit of mishap here. Okay, great. I hope my connection is slightly better now.
You can get you.
All right. So just trying to highlight the fact that you can choose to do the conversion in different ways, right? And I'm sure people will come up with smarter ways, especially the people doing maths. I'm not sure if the person who raised the issue of steps to be followed as you're answering a question. I'm not sure if they're doing maths or something, but there are smarter ways of doing this. This is just one way, model way of doing this computation. Take your pick. You can either dumb them down. You can convert. So if you're dealing with, if the throughput is in megabytes per second, and your measurable is in gigabytes, you can choose to convert the throughput to the equivalent gigabyte, although this is going to be a slightly lower value, or you can dumb this down to megabytes. Right? So the choice is yours. All you have to do is know exactly how you go about converting these different measurables here.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
How did we get to 15 seconds? How did we get to the 15 seconds when calculating?
Okay. So here's the thing. We're saying we have 5 point throughput. Throughput is 5.27 megabits per second. File is 10 megabytes. One way of calculating this, we know that throughput is going to be, time is going to be equal to size over throughput. One way of doing this computation is we can convert this 10 megabytes into bits per second. Let's do that. And I will move them here. Throughput. This is the size, the file. MB KB bytes. We are saying that for us to get to megabits, all we have to do is multiply this 10 by 1024. For us to get the equivalent kilobytes, all we have to do is multiply this by another 1024. Sorry, for us to get to this stage here, we need to do this. This is 10 megabytes is what we're working with. For us to get the kilobytes, we just multiply the 10 by 1024. For us to get the equivalent bytes, we just multiply what we got here, the kilobytes, by another 1024, we get this value. For us to get to the bits, we know that one bit, one byte is equal to 8 bits. I have to do the direct proportion here is equal to 8 bits. For us to get the bits, which we don't know, and we have this value, all we have to do is multiply this by 8. So we have these bytes, right? The measurable has been dumbed down to bytes. The question then is, how do we plug in these values into this formula? We have to dumb this down to its base equivalent. It's currently in megabits per second. For us to get it to the point where it's in, so megabits is 5.27. How about that? Kilobits is going to be this times 1,000. Bits is going to be this times 1,000. Now that this is in bits per second, we can plug it in. All we have to do is the measurable is going to be this, and the throughput is going to be this. And then we have the 15 seconds. Is this making sense? If you want, you can do it the other way around. I'm not sure which method I used here, if I use the same method in the slides. Does this help in making you understand how we go to the 15 seconds?
Yes, sir.
What we did here in the spreadsheet is we've dumbed down everything to bits, right? We want to make sure that the throughput is in bits per second. The size is also in bits per second. What we could have done, and let's do this, what we could have done is using the same things we have here. We create a new worksheet. We can say we are going to convert everything that's in bits to bytes, because this is already in bytes. So we'll start with the file. Dumb down the file into bytes. The base unit is bytes, not megabytes. So how do we do that? Megabytes, kilobytes, bytes. We need to dumb it down to bytes. Megabytes is 10. And I'm wondering, did you convert that? Is this in bits per second or megabytes, bits per second? So megabytes is 10. Kilobytes is going to be the same thing, 1024. Bytes is going to be this times 1024. So we have this measurable in bytes. We now need to convert this throughput into bytes per second. Currently, it's represented in bits per second. It's megabits per second. The first thing we need to do is normalize it into its base unit. So megabit per second value is 5.27. Kilobit per second is going to be this times 1,000. Notice for the bits, right? It's a normal metric that we normally use, times 1,000 for kilo, right? Don't forget this. And then for bits per second, we're saying we are going to multiply this by 1,000. This is now in bits per second. But remember, we are saying we want to convert this to bytes per second. It's currently in bits per second. What we know is that 1 byte is equal to 8 bits. So we want to convert the bits that we have into bytes. What do? We just divide this by 8 instead of multiplying it by 8 like we did there. So bytes per second is going to be equal to this divided by 8. Now we have the file in bytes, we have the throughput in bytes per second. And then we can just plug it into our formula, which is equal to time is equal to measurable over throughput. And all we have to do is just divide the measurable divided by the throughput, and we get the 15 as well. Same thing, it's just that in this method, we did it the other way around, right? Where we normalized and converted everything into bits per second. In this method, we did the opposite. We converted everything, all the units, into bytes. The thing you have to do is the takeaway point here is you want to learn how to normalize. Make sure that you're normalizing things the right way. Observe, if we say we're going to use this method here, assuming this file here is 1.5 GB, right? Someone asks you to say, how long is it going to take Lighton to move? Notice my source was my hard disk here. To move a Kubuntu 16.1 64-bit ISO image from his hard disk to his computer using this throughput here. Let's assume the average throughput is 28.5 megabytes per second. The file is 1.5 gigabytes per second, right? Measurable file is 1.5 GB. Throughput rate is 28.5 megabytes per second. Notice this is different from the data rates used when transmitting data over the network. Those are different units. They're measured in megabits or in bits per second. In this case, on your computer, when you're moving files, like what Lighton was doing here, these units are in the same base unit, which is like bytes. This is already in bytes. So the file is represented in bytes and the throughput is in bytes as well. So you notice that the normalization we have to do here is just make sure that we dump them down all to the same base unit. Giga is not the same as mega. So either you scale this or you dump it down to megabytes, in which case you just multiply this by 1024, get this 1536 megabytes, or you could choose to convert this 25 megabytes per second into gigabytes per second. If we are to convert this into gigabytes per second, we have to divide this by 1024. So we'll divide 25.5 divided by 1024. Now this is what I was saying, right? The conversion, how you choose to dumb down your figures, normalize your figures, you have to be very careful.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, if we're changing from megabytes to gigabytes, isn't the value supposed to increase?
If you're changing
from megabytes to gigabytes.
No, the value decreases. So here's the thing, and I know it can be confusing. Here's the thing, we have file. Let's say we have 24. Let's say we have 1 gigabyte, 1 terabyte, I guess, gigabyte. So we have 1 gigabyte. So byte, megabyte, kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte. Let's say we have this bytes. Is the value going to increase as we are upscaling, or it's going to decrease? It's going to decrease. Why? Because a kilobyte, for you to get a kilobyte, you need to divide the byte by 1024. For you to get the megabyte, you need to divide the kilobyte by 1024. So you notice that the value is decreasing.
I meant megabytes to gigabytes.
Yeah, but this is the same. So you can look at this thing here. It's the same. We're converting 1024 to gigabyte. It reduces because a giga is larger. Is this making sense? I don't know if people are still confused.
Yes, sir, it does. Now.
Okay, great, good stuff. Are there any other random questions here? It's sad that we've taken this long to. Okay. We proceed if there are no questions, unless if there are questions. Okay, 5:55. Let's just do away with these rates, and then maybe we can finish off the remainder of this slide on Monday or something. So the answer here, like we said, is we get to essentially 5 seconds. Is approximately 16 seconds. Now, I don't know if people would say it's going to take 15.9 seconds, right? It would be like better if you tell a human being that it's going to take 16 seconds rather than telling them it will take you 15.92 seconds. But hey, whatever works for you, right? All right. I'm wondering if maybe we should start this or. Okay, we'll finish off the remainder of this slide on Monday, I guess. I don't know if we're meeting tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. We're meeting tomorrow. One remaining with a few slides. Sorry?
How about if you got the last part of this of the slide, like a screencast of it, so that you don't take up much time explaining the same topic over and over?
Well, I mean, it's not a matter of explaining the same topic over and over again. I mean, this is what we're doing, right? We progress only when we are done with a certain section of there's a reason why we are having these live interactions. Number one, you probably haven't, if you haven't figured this out, I want to put it out there in case you've forgotten what I wrote in my email. I want us to give people the opportunity to ask questions in the process. If I record the offline screencast, the only way you can ask questions is you send me a private email to say, Lighton, can you, how do I do this, for instance, right? This, in my opinion, is much better. Although, I mean, it's an experiment, it's still ongoing. We've only been at it for, this is week number 2. Let's see how this goes. If we get to a stage where the live lectures become a bad idea, like it's already happened, I lost connection at some stage. I had to swap to a different ISP. If that persists, then maybe we can revert back to the screencast. Yeah, but yeah, anyway. Any other questions? All right, what if you use 2 to the power 20? What is that power 2 to the, what are you talking about? What is 2 to, what 2 to the power 20 are you talking about here? No, I don't know what you're talking about there. Okay, see you when you see me. Cheers, bye, thank you.
Bye.
So guys, we meet at 21.